Now, though, could we see vaccine tourism becoming a thing, where those who aren't seen as a priority to get the coronavirus jab jump the queue by heading abroad and paying for it privately? There are fears this could be the case, and one person who's described it as a potential disaster is Mukhtar Karim, the chief executive of the non-profit humanitarian NGO, the Lady Fatima Charitable Trust. And Mukhtar joins me now. Good morning.
Morning to you, Matt.
So explain, first of all, what vaccine tourism... We've heard in the past about sort of benefit tourism, I suppose, and health tourism, where people might go to different countries to get medical procedures. How would vaccine tourism work in practice?
Well, the way I see it and the danger it poses is that with the rollout of the vaccine taking a fair amount of time, those who are perhaps not in the high priority listing, but still have had an anxious year, want to go back to, normalizing their activities, be able to travel the globe, whether on business or on tourism, feeling that I can't wait for this to get to me. Let's see where it's available sooner because I can afford to jump the queue. Now, from a system of developing herd immunity and waiting for that to come in a few years' time, why don't we just go for horde immunity where, the number of vaccines being hoarded in the developing world outstrip the, availability for the developing world. And yet, suppliers and manufacturers making it available privately in those places and saying, if you can afford it, come here and get it quicker.
I suppose because we're at the very early stage of this, it's only the UK which has approved the first Pfizer vaccine for use. It feels like this might be slightly the calm before the storm. That actually, if we get into the new year in other countries, I think the EU said it's not going to approve it or approve anything until the new year, by which point Britain will be several weeks ahead, and then other countries might start the same. And this is, it's sort of, it's absolute gold dust, isn't it? If your economy can start opening up, if people can start seeing each other, do you think we might start seeing those tensions between different countries?
I think so too, and I think Canada has also joined the list of countries approving the vaccine and having its deployment. And sure, more vaccines like the Oxford Institute's one comes into play as well. So there'll be a wider availability. But even so, with up to 8 vaccine providers coming on board, vaccinating the world population and making sure the whole world is a safer place post-pandemic. Will require good regulation, good deployment. Now that we've waited the testing and the authorization period to go ahead in a much more expedited fashion, the acquisition of the doses to be administered, as well as the delivery of those vaccines to individual patients, I think is what 2021 and 2022 will be defined by in terms of controlling the pandemic.
And whose responsibility is it to try and stop this happening? Is it the vaccine companies themselves to try and control supplies that go to sort of national governments and national health systems, or is it, essentially they are businesses, they're there to make money, and if somebody's willing to pay for it, then maybe they're free to do that. How can we sort of control this so you don't have a situation where people are popping to Thailand, for example, to try and to get a jab because they've signed it off before their own country?
Players, particularly in industries such as finance, healthcare and defense, could be fairly dangerous. And therefore, I would advocate for it to be strong government regulation on 2 elements, both in the fairness of deployment, but also the efficacy and avoiding dangers. Who's to say that when someone boards a plane for Thailand, in the example that you give, that the vaccine that's available from them there is actually legal, that it's been safely stored, and that it will be safely administered? Wouldn't it be much better to have the regulatory process now that we've had an expedited training and a robust deployment procedure put in place for the administration of the vaccine to also be delivered in a regulated and safe environment?
And I suppose that's the really important thing, isn't it? In order for and because this vaccine needs to be, well, certainly the first one anyway, needs to be kept very cold. And then you need 2 doses, so it's not you're not just sort of it's not an easy thing to receive safely and effectively to make sure that you are then protected. And presumably the other thing is if you go, you don't know always what what you're getting. And there's obviously been examples of people going abroad for cosmetic surgery and that sort of thing, and that goes wrong, and you don't have any recourse. And, you need to be pretty sure when you roll your sleeve up what it is that's been put in your arm.
Exactly that. And also, if we are to feel safer as a nation, knowing that everyone has had a jab that has had some degree of administered risk through it. So we know what we're getting, as opposed to someone who's probably had a placebo shot and just feels better from it, roaming in our midst, making us, that much less safer. Having had the 2020 that we've had, I think it would be much better to know that the administered rollout of the vaccine is going to create a safer and controlled building of immunity and going back to our regular leisure and business activities.
And what can be done to try and alleviate this? Because obviously we've heard this week about how, I think it was Canada had something like 10 times enough vaccine to vaccinate everyone in Canada, while poorer countries have got enough for 1 in 10 people. How much of a challenge is that? The poorest could end up being really badly affected by this.
I think the role of the what the Vaccine Alliance have sort of pointed out, to say that the safer rollout of this, and the phrase I used earlier in terms of horde immunity, just because you keep 10 times what your population will need doesn't make you any safer.
It doesn't make you 10 times less. Yeah,
exactly. You have as many people as you have, and to be able to safely get it to them will require a better deployment process rather than a better acquisition process. But also understanding that we were a global economy going into 2020, and we very much want to return to international trade and, people, the hospitality sector and the tourism sector returning. And would it be fair to have, our tourists going abroad only to, feel that those serving them have not been vaccinated, or just been vaccinated to be able to serve the tourism sector, and the rest of the sectors abroad, falling over because only 1 in 10 people in the developing world would have access to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things, that getting the vaccine isn't the end of something. It's only the beginning of a whole new load of really difficult questions. Really good to speak to you. Mukhtar Karim there from the Lady Fatima Charitable Trust, telling us about the prospect of the rise of the vaccine tourism industry. Of course there is. Where there's a breakthrough, there's someone else trying to make money.